The Vikings, fierce seafarers, raiders, and traders whose exploits reshaped medieval Europe. But in the icy northlands where they lived, survival in winter meant more than mastery of the seas. How did these people, living centuries before refrigeration, manage to keep their food edible through months of freezing darkness? Did they discover secret methods long forgotten by time? Did they rely on extreme measures, turning their society into one of endurance and innovation? The answers might surprise us, but the mystery of how the Vikings preserved their meat raises a deeper question. Were these warriors not just conquerors of lands, but conquerors of nature itself? The Viking Age spanned roughly from the late 8th century to the 11th century AD. These Scandinavian peoples came from regions that are today Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Harsh winters defined their calendar, cutting off supplies and making agriculture nearly impossible during the coldest months. Survival required careful planning, and food preservation became not just a skill, but a foundation of their culture. Evidence from archaeological digs, sagas, and historical records paints a picture of resilience. Villages stocked supplies months ahead. Families calculated their needs for the long dark, and entire communities revolved around preparations for winter. Understanding their methods of preserving meat gives us insight into how the Vikings endured such extreme conditions. Surviving winter in the Viking homelands presented an extraordinary challenge. Farming produced grains and vegetables during the warmer months, but once temperatures dropped and snow fell, these sources dried up. Meat and fish acted as the cornerstone of winter diets, supplying crucial protein and fat. However, without ways to preserve it, fresh meat quickly spoiled. Excess livestock could not be sustained through the winter due to limited fodder, so slaughter commonly took place in late autumn. At that moment, communities faced a pressing task: how to transform an overwhelming quantity of fresh meat into a resource that would last for months. One of the most dependable methods for preservation was drying and smoking. Drying stripped the meat of its moisture, the very element that bacteria needed to thrive. By exposing strips of meat to circulating air, sometimes aided by smoke, Vikings could produce a tough but edible product that lasted for long periods. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements shows traces of structures that likely functioned as smokehouses. The smoke added antimicrobial qualities, while also giving the meat an extra layer of flavor and keeping insects at bay. Today, historians believe that smoked lamb, beef, and even horse meat were staples of winter stores, ensuring families survived when fresh hunting yields could not be guaranteed. Salt was another essential tool for meat preservation, though it came with limitations in the Viking world. Salt had to be mined, imported, or laboriously produced by evaporating seawater, making it a valuable commodity. Despite this, where access allowed, salting and brining became indispensable. By rubbing meat with large amounts of salt, or soaking it in brine, moisture was drawn out, and bacterial growth was halted. Archaeological finds and written accounts show that salted herring and other fish were particularly important for trade, as well as for sustenance. Leading theories suggest that wealthier Vikings and trading communities along the coast relied more heavily on salted meats than isolated inland farms, highlighting regional differences in what winter diets looked like. An often overlooked method was fermentation, which transformed raw meat or fish into strongly flavored foods that could last through the cold months. One of the most striking examples is the fermentation of fish. In Norway, evidence suggests that Vikings buried fish in the ground or stored it in sealed containers, where it slowly decomposed under controlled conditions. While such foods might seem unpalatable by modern standards, these fermented supplies provided nourishment when alternatives were scarce. The famous dish, known today as rakfisk, involving fermented trout, likely has direct continuity with Viking preservation practices. This method may have originated as a necessity, but became a long-standing tradition in Scandinavian cuisine. Nature itself provided another solution to preservation. The cold climate of Scandinavia allowed meat to be stored outside or in underground pits, where natural refrigeration kept it from rotting. Archaeologists believe that some Viking communities dug storage pits lined with wood or stone, much like primitive refrigerators. Snow and ice slowed down bacterial growth, and some evidence points to the use of lakes or waterways as storage sites, with containers submerged to maintain steady, cold temperatures. This method required less preparation, but carried risk. Once warmer days returned in spring, meat stored in this way could spoil quickly. Preserving meat was not only about survival, but also shaped Viking society. The slaughtering season in autumn was often a community effort, bringing families together to process and preserve. This ensured that no food was wasted and workloads were shared. Preserved meat entered Viking feasting culture as well, playing a role in both daily life and celebratory gatherings. Some sagas mention salted or dried meats as part of banquets, showing that preserved foods were not merely emergency rations, but staples of cuisine. Through preservation practices, Vikings developed a culinary identity rooted in practicality, endurance, and communal labor. Much of what we know today about Viking preservation methods comes from a combination of archaeology and literature. Excavations at Viking farms have uncovered animal bones with cut marks, suggesting large-scale slaughter in autumn. Remnants of salt pits, fish processing stations, and preserved food residues provide further evidence. Written sources, like the Icelandic sagas, while often embellished with myth and drama, offer glimpses into domestic life where meat preservation played a central role. When layered together, these fragments of evidence build a picture of a resourceful people who understood the science of preservation long before it was formally studied. Preservation not only supplied households, but also affected Viking trade networks. Dried fish, particularly stockfish made from cod, became a major export, feeding communities far beyond Scandinavia. Evidence shows that preserved fish traveled as far as the European continent, where it was prized for both religious fasting days and general nourishment. Salted herring and dried meats similarly supported commerce, linking preservation techniques directly to the Viking economy. This demonstrates that what began as a survival strategy ultimately fueled long-distance trade and influence. Today, historians see Viking preservation techniques as a testament to ingenuity. While the Vikings are often remembered for their raids and ships, their survival through unforgiving winters required equal levels of discipline and expertise. Many of the methods they perfected, drying, smoking, salting, fermenting, remain in use in modern kitchens around the world. These traditions endure not because of romantic nostalgia, but because the techniques truly worked, standing the test of time. The mystery of how the Vikings preserved meat for winter has led us through pits of ice, smoke-filled houses, salted stores, and fermented barrels. Each method reflected a balance between necessity and creativity, transforming fragile, perishable meat into long-lasting sustenance. Archaeological evidence, historical accounts, and culinary traditions reveal that survival in the Viking world rested not only on strength in battle, but also wisdom in the kitchen and field. Their legacy reminds us that true power was not only in the sword or the sail, but also in the knowledge that brought a community safely through the coldest months of the year.